English Politics Podcast.
English Politics Podcast.
English Politics Podcast. Welcome back to the English Politics Podcast, the channel where we unravel the most intriguing political insights, events, and strategies that shape the world today. I'm your host, Hannah Taylor, bringing you another captivating episode. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic: Trump's secret strategies revealed. What were the hidden moves that defined his presidency? What strategies drove his global influence? And more importantly, how do they still resonate today? To uncover these secrets, we're honored to welcome none other than former President Donald J. Trump himself. Known for his bold and unconventional leadership, Trump's policies and decisions remain a topic of heated debate and analysis worldwide. Mr. Trump, thank you for joining us today on the English Politics Podcast. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Hannah. It's great to be here. I appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. It's important to talk about these things, especially when so many don't understand the full story.
Mr. Trump, your presidency is often described as one of the most unpredictable in history. From international diplomacy to domestic policies, you've left an indelible mark. Many believe some of your greatest successes stemmed from strategies not openly discussed. Could you give us a glimpse into what we'll be discussing today?
Absolutely, Hannah. My presidency was all about winning. For the American people, for our country, and for the world when it was right. We'll talk about some of the major decisions I made that people didn't fully understand at the time. They were strategic moves, and sometimes you have to keep things close to the chest to succeed.
That's a teaser that will surely keep our listeners hooked. Let's get started. Mr. Trump, one of your boldest moves was the diplomatic efforts with North Korea. Can you share the strategy behind those unprecedented summits?
Thank you, Hannah. The summits with Kim Jong-un were historic, but they weren't just photo ops, as some critics claimed. My strategy was straightforward, yet revolutionary. Direct engagement. No previous president had taken that step, and I believe it was necessary to break the deadlock. The goal was to bring North Korea to the table by showing strength and willingness to negotiate simultaneously. My focus was always on denuclearization, but also on creating a new narrative for peace in the region. It wasn't about giving in, but about being firm while offering an olive branch. It set a precedent, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Your energy policies, particularly regarding oil and natural gas, were transformative. How did your strategies reshape America's energy landscape?
Great question, Hannah. My strategy was simple: energy independence. For decades, we relied too much on foreign oil, especially from countries that didn't have our best interests at heart. I pushed for policies that unleashed America's natural resources, fracking, pipelines, and offshore drilling. The idea was to strengthen our economy and national security. We achieved energy dominance, which not only lowered gas prices, but also gave us leverage in foreign policy. Remember, energy is power, literally and figuratively.
Mr. Trump, you often emphasize that America First approach. How did this philosophy influence your trade negotiations?
Hannah, America First wasn't just a slogan. It was a principle. My trade negotiations were guided by fairness. For years, we were losing billions in bad deals, especially with China. The tariffs I imposed weren't to hurt anyone, but to level the playing field. The USMCA replaced NAFTA, bringing jobs back to American workers. Every deal was made with one thing in mind: how does this benefit the American people? It was about respect, making sure the U.S. wasn't taken advantage of anymore.
Your foreign policy often took unconventional paths, like moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. What was the strategy behind such decisions?
That decision, Hannah, was about keeping promises and showing strength. For years, presidents talked about moving the embassy, but none had the courage to do it. I believed it was the right thing for the U.S. and for peace in the Middle East. It wasn't just symbolic. It was a statement of our unwavering support for our allies. At the same time, It opened doors to the Abraham Accords, bringing unprecedented peace agreements between Israel and its neighbors. It was about action, not empty words.
The Hidden Truth, Trump's Secret Strategies Unveiled. In the annals of American politics, Donald J. Trump's presidency remains a period of unconventional governance, polarizing rhetoric, and decisions that defied traditional norms. Behind the public spectacle, however, lay a carefully orchestrated strategy, a chess game in which every move was deliberate, calculated, and designed to serve a larger purpose. This story delves into some of the hidden truths behind Trump's most controversial policies and the mechanisms that drove them. Act 1. The Outsider's Advantage. From the outset, Trump's journey to the presidency was anything but typical. As a businessman with no prior political experience, he was dismissed by many as an outsider who didn't belong in Washington's inner circles. Yet, this perceived disadvantage became one of his greatest strengths. One of Trump's secret strategies was to weaponize his outsider status. He used it to connect with the American public, painting himself as the antithesis of the establishment. His campaign rallies were less about policy details and more about building an emotional connection. "They're not laughing at me," he once said. "They're laughing at you. I'm just in the way." This message resonated deeply with millions of voters who felt left behind by globalization and the political elite. Trump's team, led by data-savvy strategists, used sophisticated analytics to identify these voters and target them with tailored messaging. States like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin became battlegrounds, flipping red in 2016 due to this calculated approach. Act 2. The Art of the Deal on a global stage. When Trump assumed office, critics were quick to question his ability to handle foreign policy. Yet, it was here that some of his most audacious strategies came to light. One such move was his engagement with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The secret to this unprecedented diplomacy was Trump's willingness to rewrite the rulebook. Unlike previous presidents, who relied on intermediaries and back-channel negotiations, Trump opted for direct engagement. His decision to meet Kim Jong-un face-to-face was seen as reckless by some, but it was rooted in a belief that personal rapport could break decades of hostility. Behind the scenes, Trump's team worked tirelessly to prepare for these meetings. Intelligence briefings included not just military details, but also psychological profiles of Kim. Trump's insistence on calling him Rocket Man during public speeches was not just bluster. It was a calculated tactic to rattle the North Korean leader and test his resolve. The summits may not have resulted in complete denuclearization, but they marked a historic shift in U.S.-North Korea relations, proving that boldness could open doors diplomacy had long deemed shut. Act 3. The America First Doctrine. At the core of Trump's presidency was his America First philosophy, a guiding principle that shaped everything from trade policy to immigration reform. Critics labeled it isolationist, but Trump's inner circle knew it was a strategic recalibration of American priorities. One of the key aspects of this doctrine was renegotiating trade agreements. Trump's team identified long-standing deals like NAFTA as sources of economic leakage. By replacing NAFTA with the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, Trump aimed to secure better terms for American workers and industries. The process was anything but straightforward. During negotiations, Trump's strategy involved leveraging unpredictability. At one point, he threatened to impose sweeping tariffs on Mexican imports unless the country took stronger action to curb illegal immigration. Behind closed doors, this move was debated intensely by advisors, some of whom feared economic retaliation. But Trump's gamble paid off, resulting in significant concessions from Mexico. Act 4. The Energy Revolution. Energy policy was another area where Trump's strategies often flew under the radar. His administration's emphasis on energy independence was not just about economic growth, it was about reshaping geopolitical power dynamics. Trump's decision to approve projects like the Keystone XL pipeline and expand offshore drilling sent a clear message: America would no longer rely on foreign oil. This policy shift had profound implications for global markets. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia, long accustomed to influencing oil prices, found themselves grappling with a more self-sufficient United States. What many didn't realize was the behind-the-scenes effort to make this vision a reality. Trump's team worked closely with industry leaders to identify bottlenecks in production and streamline regulatory processes. The result was a boom in domestic energy production that not only boosted the economy, but also enhanced America's strategic leverage. Act 5. The Jerusalem Gambit. Perhaps one of Trump's most controversial moves was recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and relocating the U.S. embassy there. The decision sparked outrage in the Arab world and was condemned by many international bodies. Yet, Trump stood firm, calling it a long-overdue acknowledgement of reality. What few knew was that this move was part of a larger strategy to reshape the Middle East. Trump's advisors believed that by solidifying ties with Israel, the U.S. could act as a more effective broker in the region. The move laid the groundwork for the Abraham Accords, which saw several Arab nations normalize relations with Israel. Behind the scenes, the administration engaged in extensive shuttle diplomacy, often under the radar. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, played a pivotal role in these negotiations, leveraging personal relationships to build trust among wary leaders. The result was a series of agreements that many had thought impossible. Act 6. The Media Chessboard. Trump's relationship with the media was perhaps one of the most complex aspects of his presidency. Publicly, he railed against fake news, often calling journalists the enemy of the people. Privately, however, Trump understood the power of media like few others. One of his secret strategies was to dominate the news cycle. By making bold, often controversial statements, Trump ensured that he remained at the center of public attention. His use of Twitter was particularly effective, allowing him to bypass traditional media filters and speak directly to his audience. This strategy was not without risks. Critics accused him of spreading misinformation and inflaming divisions. Yet, for Trump, the goal was always to control the narrative, even if it meant courting controversy. Act 7. The Legacy. As Trump's presidency came to a close, debates about his legacy intensified. Supporters hailed him as a transformative leader who put America first, while critics saw him as a polarizing figure who disrupted traditional norms. What cannot be denied is the strategic depth that underpinned many of his decisions. From foreign policy to domestic reforms, Trump's presidency was marked by a willingness to challenge conventions and take risks. Whether history judges him favorably or not, the hidden truths behind his strategies will remain a subject of fascination for years to come. In the end, Trump's presidency was a masterclass in the art of strategy, bold, unconventional, and unapologetically focused on winning.
Mr. Trump, it's been an incredible discussion today. Thank you for sharing these insights with us.
Thank you, Hannah. It's been a pleasure. And to all your listeners, keep asking questions and seeking the truth.
Absolutely. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the English Politics Podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more engaging content and uncover the truths behind the headlines. Follow us daily for more podcasts where we dive into politics, strategies, and stories that shape our world. Until next time, take care and stay informed.